Hey everybody, what's going on? And welcome to this week's episode of the Jedi Jans podcast. First and foremost, may the 4th be with you. What an awesome day to celebrate Star Wars. I'm definitely going to be enjoying myself today. The plan for today is to get up nice and early and enjoy the last episode of the Clone Wars. So sad. And then after that, we're going to be watching the entire Mandalorian series, which should be fun. And then, of course, after that, my plan is to watch the Siege of Mandalore again from the Clone Wars, and then at least be able to get Revenge of the Sith in. And then once I get to that point, it's just going to be a free-for-all of whatever Star Wars movie I'm feeling at that point. Probably try to watch as much of the original trilogy as I can. So that's the plan for today. As far as things to talk about for this episode, I really didn't have anything planned, but something that I was thinking about was I was talking to a buddy of mine today. We were just talking about the movies and, which ones were our favorites and which ones we didn't, which ones we don't have at the top of our list. And we were also discussing certain things that bother us in movies and things that I hadn't really thought about before that he brought up. So just to bring up a couple of those things and, little nitpicks about Star Wars that seem to bother him, and some things that seem to bother me. Just bring them up, and again, I'd be very interested to hear what your guys' opinions are on things in Star Wars that maybe you didn't necessarily agree with. Things that just took you out of the moment. Things that took you out of the movies completely. Be very interested to hear that. But getting into it, so a couple things that we were talking about. We talked about the movie Solo and how we really enjoy the movie, but he said that one of his things about the movie is the first 10 minutes of the movie are very hard for him to get into the movie. He said he didn't like how they kind of just jumped into the whole scene, and he didn't like the hot rod chase in the city or the industrial center, whatever you want to call it. He didn't like that part of it. Lady Proxima was a issue for him. And she was an issue for me, honestly. I really felt like when you see a giant worm, you don't expect them to speak basic, and that really took me out of it. So that was definitely something that we agreed on. That was a nitpick that we just couldn't get past. But as far as that, we both agree that Solo is a very enjoyable movie. He just said that the first 10 minutes is hard for him. But other than that, he's perfectly fine with the movie. He said he's been watching it a lot over this quarantine period. Speaking of this quarantine period, I just want to make sure that everybody's staying safe out there. I hope you're all doing well. I hope you're all healthy. For those of you who are sick, I hope that you are recovering quickly. Prayers with you, and just we're all just trying to stay safe, and we're all trying to stay healthy, and again, just so thankful for the healthcare providers who are still out there working, and also our law enforcement, all that. And I am also working. Our warehouse is dedicated as an essential business, so I definitely know what it's like to be out in public and having to wear the masks and everything. So we just got to stay strong, and we're going to get through this together. So just stay safe and stay healthy, folks. But moving on to another movie that we were talking about, brought up Rogue One. This one really caught me by surprise. He said one of the things that took him out of Rogue One was Riz Ahmed's character, Bodhi Rook, the Imperial pilot. He said he couldn't get past the fact that he had long hair. And I didn't understand exactly what he was saying at the time, but he's like, okay, think about it. He's he's in the Empire. He is an Imperial. He's like, look at all the other Imperials. They all have military haircuts. None of them have long hair. He's like, as soon as I saw an Imperial with long hair, it took me completely out of it. And I thought about it, and I was like, yeah, come to think of it, I can't think of one person working for the Empire who isn't trimmed and professional as far as their look goes. So, yeah, definitely thinking about it, him having long hair was definitely an anomaly. Now, maybe they did it to kind of show, give a visual cue that he was kind of a rebel in the Imperial mix and everything, but it's just things that people notice, and it's amazing what can kick people out of the moment. So I thought that was really interesting. The other thing he brought up from Rogue One was them bringing Saw Gerrera in. He didn't like the fact that he had a respirator, which I get what they were trying to show in the scene where they were trying to show, like, he's been fighting so long, and he's pushing the boundaries of what is acceptable, and he's basically becoming more man the machine, kind of like what happened to Vader, showing that, ignoring the rules of engagement and things, trying to play by the Empire's rules, he's really only hurting himself and his cause by doing so. But yeah, the respirator was definitely kind of especially the way that they shot it and the sound that came from the respirator, you can definitely tell that it was supposed to be a nail on the head Vader reference. So, yeah, he said that took him out of the movie as well. Oh, what other movies did we talk about? We talked about Episode 8, obviously, because that's one of the most divisive movies in the sequel trilogy, at least. And he was talking about how just a couple extra lines could have fixed a few things in the movie. Like, with Luke throwing the lightsaber over his shoulder, he said that if they would have just added, like, a line of dialogue saying, like, you think this is what gives a Jedi his power, and tossing it over his shoulder, then maybe it would have made more sense. But then he went on to say he also didn't like the fact that Luke was a grumpy old man. Now, as I've explained in my other podcasts, I get what they were trying to do with that. But me personally, I would have absolutely loved it if he would have been waiting for her. Like, if he would have seen a vision after the temple was burned, that one would come to help him, but for that time he had to be hidden away as to protect himself. When she came, and he said something like, you were the one who was foretold to me from the Force, we will be able to help free the galaxy from the First Order, and but first, we need to train. I need to teach you everything that I know, and that would be why they are on the island for so long. And and then, of course, the training could have gotten interrupted, or maybe it wouldn't have gotten interrupted, I don't know. But I just have this vision in my head, and again, this is just my fan fiction of Episode 8, but I would have loved to have seen the two of them arrive on Crate together and walk out and face Kylo. Now, of course, you don't get the great throne room sequence where Rey and Kylo team up if you do it that way, because she's been on the island. Or you could have done it where that's where Luke and Rey show up, as they show up in the throne room, and they have to fight Kylo and Snoke in some capacity. It's just what I have in my head, and I'm with a lot of other people. I would have loved to have seen Luke pull a Star Destroyer right out of the sky. I mean, the Force projection thing was pretty darn cool, but I don't know, maybe the video games do have me a little jaded. I absolutely loved playing the Force Awakens games. I loved how powerful you felt playing Starkiller, and you just kind of, I feel like Luke would have been there. Like, maybe not as powerful in some of the abilities that Starkiller had, obviously because he was able to tap into the dark side while still being able to stay on the side of the about while being able to stay in the light as well. But I don't know. It's just what I episode 8 was not what I envisioned it being. Of course, that being said, I appreciate the movie for what it is, and it's definitely not one of my least favorites. So, that's what I'll have to say about that. Then we started talking about episode 9 and some of the things that bothered us in that. But for me, I still stood firm on the fact that I really didn't think the Palpatine had to come back. You could have had him in some sort of holocron image or a hologram or something like that, and it would have been fine, would have been a nod, but Snoke could have just as easily been the one that was brought back through Force transfer. There's no reason that he couldn't have learned it, because he was built up to be more powerful than the Emperor, and he was supposed to be the real threat in the galaxy, and I just feel like it was a missed opportunity with a character. So that was definitely one thing that I felt could have been different. But then the other thing was, obviously, I wanted more Ben Solo. I've not been shy about talking about that. I wanted to see Ben Solo turn sooner, potentially fight a dark version of Rey. Didn't have to happen, but I would have loved to have seen him turn sooner, and I would have loved to see him live at the end of the movie, because I just think it would have been so cool to see a villain in Star Wars live and have to he'd have to answer for his actions. That would have been really interesting to see. Obviously, I talked about this in the other podcast, but then my buddy was talking to me about it, and he said, I think it would have been really cool that if he would have been fighting with Rey, and then he passed out from the battle when he healed her, if he would have passed out instead of died, and then when he woke up, he was on the island on Ahch-To. And I was like, oh, okay. And then it's like, and instead of him having to go back into the galaxy, he then takes his place on the island in exile, living the rest of his life there on Ahch-To peacefully with the caretakers taking care of the first Jedi temple. I thought that was really interesting, and I thought it would have been even better if Rey stayed with him. But whatever. Yeah, I was a huge sucker for Ben Solo. I was endeared to him as soon as he jumped into the giant hole on Exegol and landed on the chain, and he was just like, ow. Like, it was great. Like, from that point, I knew that it was the son of Han Solo, and it was awesome. It was literally like watching Han Solo with a lightsaber from that point on. So, yeah, Ben Solo for me was a real missed opportunity. But again, I really appreciate all the movies for what they are, and like I said in my first podcast, Star Wars movies are like my kids. I love them all for different reasons. But anyway, that's really all that I had to talk about today. So this is going to be a short episode, but I really wanted to come on and just wish everybody a happy May 4th. I don't know what you'll all be doing, but if you want to leave in the comments what you're going to be doing to celebrate Star Wars Day, please do so. And this is where we're going to end it. So, as always, everybody, may the 4th be with you, and may the Force be with you.